Rachel and Mary met accidentally and only knew each other for about a month. It just so happened that having moved to a new neighborhood, they became neighbors. Mary White was a single mother with 3 children. The kids' father worked as a truck driver and died in a car accident 3 years ago. It happened when he was driving through northern Maine in difficult weather conditions. Of course, it wasn't easy for Mary to raise 3 kids on her own, especially since the oldest kiddo was only 7 years old. Rachel Harris was very understanding and compassionate towards her new neighbor from the very moment they met. Despite the fact that Rachel and her husband already had 2 kids of their own, she always helped Mary any way she could. She would pass along her kiddos' clothes after they grew out of them and let Mary borrow money without actually expecting her to pay it back. And sometimes she would treat her to some delicious homemade cakes. At moments like these, Mary would always tear up, even though it made her feel ashamed. "Thank you, Rachel. You're my guardian angel," the woman would say gratefully. "Come on, don't exaggerate. I'm also a mother, so I know how hard it can get sometimes. And you have 3 kids with no husband. So please feel free to ask for help if you ever need it. I'm always here for you," Rachel answered with sincere warmth in her voice. Unfortunately, the young mothers had no way of knowing what a horrible turn of events the evil fate had in store for them. It all began with the fact that one morning, Mary started feeling unwell. She was very weak and was feeling pain in her upper quadrant. At first, the woman thought that she must have eaten something bad at dinner the day before. But when the symptoms intensified, Mary decided to see a doctor. Since her 3 children needed supervision, she asked Rachel to babysit them for a couple of hours. "I'll be quick. I'll just get checked up and get right back. Don't worry, Spencer and Sally are low maintenance. But Brian can get a bit agitated sometimes, especially if they take away his toy," Mary chattered from the door. "Everything will be fine, dear. Take your time and get a thorough examination. You should take your health more seriously," Rachel assured her neighbor. She was happy to help Mary because she loved children very much and was willing to spend all her time with them. Before leaving, Mary hugged her neighbor and promised to return as soon as possible. Rachel waved her goodbye, then gave a thumbs up in approval. Mary couldn't have known at this time that she would have to stay at the hospital for several days. After describing her symptoms to the on-call doctor, Mary got worried as the doctor lowered his eyes and sent her to the oncology department. They ran all the necessary tests there, and unfortunately, it turned out that Mary had stomach cancer, and at an extremely advanced stage. The doctors were frank with the patient and honestly informed her that she didn't have a long time to live. Of course, the doctors did everything they could to make sure the cancer didn't spread further and to stop the growth of the malignant tumor in the body of the young mother. Unfortunately, Mary never got to leave the hospital and passed away just 1 week after she felt seriously unwell and decided to see a doctor. The woman probably had some rather painful symptoms before, but taking care of her children, she tried not to pay attention to them and endured the pain, which became stronger by the day. The news of Mary's death came like a bolt from the blue for Rachel. Rachel took care of her neighbor's children the entire week Mary spent at the hospital, since they had already become good friends. What's going to happen to the kiddos now? As far as I know, Mary has no relatives, so her children will probably end up in an orphanage, Rachel thought with tears in her eyes. The very thought of it broke the woman's heart. The fact was that Rachel herself was raised in an orphanage, so she had firsthand experienced how awful life there could get. Her parents died in a fire, and the only reason the girl survived was the fact that she was at daycare at the time. Therefore, she simply couldn't send Mary's children off to the orphanage. At some point, after arranging Mary's funeral, Rachel thought about taking custody of the neighbor's orphaned children. But to do this, the woman needed to enlist the support of her husband, who was the love of her life. To Rachel's delight, Simon wholeheartedly supported his wife's desire to adopt the 3 children of their deceased neighbor. "That's a great idea, honey. I fully support you. So many misfortunes have already befallen these kiddos," the tragic death of their father, and now their mother is gone too. It would be very difficult for them at the orphanage, and they might even get separated there. We cannot allow this, Simon said and hugged his wife. Of course, the spouses still had to go through a lot of lengthy and complicated adoption processes with all the checks and paperwork before they could get custody of Spencer, Sally, and Brian. But these weren't the only challenges that Rachel and Simon had to face. The problem was that their house was rather small, and there simply wasn't enough space to add 3 more kiddos to the family. But Rachel and Simon didn't lose heart. The determined couple gave their bed to the children while they slept wherever they could. Sometimes it was the bathroom, sometimes in the kitchen. However, even given all the inconveniences, Rachel and Simon never complained about their fate. The couple met back at the university. Simon was the captain of the university football team, and Rachel was the captain of the cheerleaders, who were present at all the games of the team, supporting and cheering them on. The young people liked each other at first sight, and within just a few weeks of their first meeting, they became a couple. Shortly before graduation, Rachel and Simon held a small wedding ceremony and thus tied their lives together forever. 9 months later, their first child was born, and 2 years later, their second. The family wasn't well off, but the spouses had long been accustomed to living on a tight budget, so they always managed to provide their kiddos with the basics. But now that they've gotten custody of Spencer, Sally, and Brian, their family budget was falling apart. In order to provide for 5 children, Simon had to get a second job, and thus he spent virtually no time at home and only got a few hours of sleep a day. Rachel, on the other hand, took care of 5 children whom she all equally loved. The most interesting part was that the couple didn't seem to be feeling any discomfort and was actually happy. Simon and Rachel honestly shared the workload and faced all the hardships together, becoming an example for all of their friends to follow. The life of the family changed when Matthew Simons, a reporter for the local TV channel, accidentally found out about their incredible decision. The man was touched by the fact that the family that already had 2 children found the strength to adopt 2 more children of their deceased neighbor. Thus, Matthew decided not to waste time and went to see the Harris couple right away. Imagine Rachel's surprise when she saw a famous reporter at the door. She only knew the man from TV, from the local news. "Hello, sir. Is there anything I can help you with?" asked the surprised woman. "Yes, ma'am, there is. I'd like to interview you," Matthew answered quickly. Unaware of what the reporter was up to, Rachel agreed to tell him about how she and her husband got custody of the neighbor's children. Moreover, the modest young mother didn't think about the potential fame. She didn't even suspect that someone might be actually interested in their story. Everything changed the very next morning when the news about the sensational act of the Harris couple got covered by all the news outlets of the country. Impressed by Simon and Rachel's kindness and compassion, people from all over the United States called to express their appreciation and admiration for them. Soon, the local mayor's office joined in, and together with a group of volunteers, they offered to renovate the Harris home. Moreover, the construction crew decided not just to renovate their house, but also to expand it as much as possible, to make sure that there was enough space for all the members of this large family. But that wasn't all. In a beautiful ceremony, the mayor's office gave Simon the keys to a brand new car, and Rachel got a certificate for free groceries to any grocery store in the state for a year. The children of the late Mary White weren't left aside either. A playground was built for them next to their new home. Spencer, Brian, and Sally couldn't even have dreamed of getting treated so kindly by complete strangers. With tears in her eyes, Rachel remembered her late neighbor who didn't live long enough to see all of it happen. "Rest in peace, dear. Your children are happy. You can rest assured that I'll do everything to ensure that they have everything they need," Rachel whispered, standing at Mary's grave. Of course, when petitioning for custody of the neighbor's kiddos, Rachel couldn't have known how her life would change. The Harris family got featured in many more news stories and other videos, thereby setting an example for thousands of families across the country. Looking at the happy faces of Rachel, Simon, and their children, the local residents looked up to them and tried to imitate them in everything. After all, if love and understanding reign in the family, then no hardships could ever defeat it, and fortune will definitely smile upon all of its members.